It's a day when public participation will take place. I think that's what it is, in terms of a conversation that's to be had with the president in his unveiling of the blueprint towards 2060. All right. Now, helping us in this conversation this hour, when we're going to be looking at a number of things around the president's scorecard, a year to the next general election, promises versus delivery. Javas Bigambo is a policy and political analyst, and he joins us this morning. Javas, good morning.
Good morning, my relative. How are you?
Okay. That's where we are going. All right. Good morning. I'm fine, thank you. Dismas Mokua.
Good morning.
The political analyst.
The political risk analyst.
The political risk analyst. Good morning to you.
Good morning. You sound surprised that he's your relative.
If I tell you that I am from Ika North Local Government, Igbodo in Delta State, I would want Javas to then be able to confirm the route to and from that area.
But you know it's Bantu, and Bantus are said to have come from Nigeria.
Okay.
Hi,
cousins.
We could go on forever. Well, good morning to you both, and thank you for being here. We're going to look into the promises versus delivery. It is important. And of course, especially today, being the 12th of August, when KICC will be flocked by quite a number of people to then hear what the blueprint is for the nation. That we're moving is an interesting conversation. Before we do that, there's another country where Dennis has taken us to this week.
The capital is Nouakchott.
Okay.
You know the country?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. Javas, which country?
See,
where his relatives come from.
I have not lost sight of many shores. And so it's proper to admit that I may not have visited nearly every country that exists on this good earth.
Say Islamic
but
Republic.
It is my interest and enthusiasm to get to visit there. I think you have.
Yes, it's the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, a country that is rich in gold, copper, gypsum, phosphate, and iron ore. So they have the longest and heaviest train pretty much in the world, the iron ore train, because of then what it gets to ship, the resources that they do have. They're also rich in sardines. She doesn't like omena, so sardines, mackerel, octopus, and tuna in terms of fishing that does happen in the country. But the proverb that we get... Why are you laughing?
It appears like you've been retained by the embassy too.
Why are you laughing? Yeah, but the proverb that we get this morning, if I could only find it. When praying for a madman, never close your eyes. When praying for a madman, never close your eyes. Dismas, how would you interpret it?
I also came prepared with my own proverbs.
Interpret mine first.
Yeah, it says that from a political risk perspective, is never shoot in the dark.
Okay.
Never cross this Mombasa road with a blindfold.
Okay.
Interesting.
Proverb for a proverb. Javas, how would you interpret it?
Well, my good ears have once heard and learned that when a blind person tells you to throw stones, be sure that he's stepping on one. And so in the circumstances of saying prayers for a madman, you see, it's a question of trying to guard yourself against any improbable surprises from the said possessed person. Because there could be an attack perhaps or anything, and such surprises, of course, will do things to you that your imagination had not entertained.
What was your proverb?
Actually two. Proverbs 10:14 and 17:28.
Okay.
I'm not much of one
the
when
actual
it comes to
proverbs.
the actual proverb, yeah.
Okay.
10:14. I'd actually challenge you to go through it.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I see you've got a top of the range machine here.
Proverbs
10:14
10:14
and 17:28.
10:14 Proverbs. The wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool invites ruin.
And 17:28.
17:28. Leo.
We're going catechism today. I don't know. Do you guys have a minute for us to have the conversation?
7:28.
17:28.
17:28. Just read it. 17:28. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise, and he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding.
Okay.
Okay. In short, a fool is a fool.
Let's see how those two things will take us as we have this conversation. All right. We're going to ask for a bit of an overview. We'll do the macro and then we'll go into the micro. Because the conversation that we're having today, a year to the next general election, is important for us to look at what an administration then has been able to deliver. Because we're getting into promise season again. And in terms of what is being promised to the people of Kenya, today is a marker or an indicator of that. But let's look at what has been promised and what has actually been delivered over the last 4 years, and what that we can actually see and understand. Let's take an overview. We'll start with you, Javas.
Well, I think I wouldn't tie myself to the issue of what you're calling promises over the last 4 years. I think what you are asking in a proper way is whether, for instance, President William Ruto has made true the realization of his manifesto, commitments that he made when he was running for office.
Potato, but okay, let's go.
Yes. And I think if we have to be true to facts and ourselves, and I'm saying this with specific attention as well to particularities that were made in the statements yesterday by Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, I would say that if my opinion was sought, of course, as it has, to rate the implementation of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda by President William Ruto, I would place it at 71%. 71%.
Okay.
With facts and data to back this up.
Okay.
And so I would say that there is a greater sense of reality and satisfaction that he has met 71% of his commitments. Second, that through comparative lenses of the past regimes from the time of independence, President William Ruto arises as the first president who has committed and met more than 50% of his manifesto in the first term. In fact, you would realize that the Jubilee government or regime, and even the Kibaki regime, that meeting the manifesto was close to 35 to 40%. And so here there has been more commitment and determination, thanks, one, to the literacy of the people, commitment, the push, the vigilance, and in fact, thanks also to the systems and technology, the period in which we live, that everything can be verified in real time. And because of that, Oko, you will be relieved to know, just as much as many Kenyans will be relieved to know, that weighing the implementation of the manifesto by the president and looking at the statements that were made by Rigathi Gachagua yesterday, that in fact, Rigathi Gachagua has led us to a realization that we are living in a period of truth decay, a time of post-truth, where alternatives are being sought and pursued for political expediency, and reality or facts being discarded or ignored altogether.
Okay.
Yes.
Before we come back to ask you the facts and data that you talk about, Mokua, tell us, what's your overview of the last 4 years?
Well, I look at it from a political science perspective, that the primary responsibility of a head of state or head of government is to maintain 3 levels of stability. The first one, you must have a political stability, economic stability, and military or security stability. And if you look at many countries across Africa, they've had those challenges. So President Ruto has been able to do that. And in the composition of his administration, right from Kenya Kwanza, you had the people who actually understand what statecraft is all about. Most administrations in Africa hardly have people who understand what statecraft is. And you can go all the way to South Sudan, you can go all the way to Senegal, where the leadership have got challenges with statecraft, and their personal interests normally take a front seat, and the people get frustrated. Like, for instance, in the composition of the Kenya Kwanza administration, you see people who really understand how a state is supposed to be run. But having said all that, the Gen Z stands out as a stain in the reputation of President Ruto's administration, while it's the case that is hit almost all the high notes on issues of socio-economic development, but on issue of abduction, there is a big responsibility. And either by acts of omission or commission, the people that he has given the responsibility have let him down. Because for a Kenyan, when the president is sworn into office, he places his hand on the Bible and the Kenyan constitution, and he says he's going to secure lives and properties within the territory of Kenya. So the buck stops with him. So even if the people is given responsibility, maybe he's nominated them, they go through the National Assembly, now they're occupying office, if they do not deliver, he's got the unique responsibility of telling them to pack and go, or making them resign. So the buck stops with them. I mean, one would easily say that we've got an independent National Police Service, that the buck stops with the IG, but Kenyans did not elect the IG. Kenyans elected President William Samoei Ruto, and the buck stops with him. So Kenyans have got very valid expectations that when he was sworn into office, he said he's protecting lives and properties, he must do that. And if there's anybody within his administration, either by acts of omission or commission, or even sabotage wants to frustrate him, then the person must take responsibility. And I'd like to buttress a point raised by I don't know whether you're my relative. Yeah. But what Mr. Rigathi Gachagua has been doing from the time he was impeached, in my view, is some sort of a blessing in disguise. Because you remember, while Mr. Raila Odinga was around, he was probably the only Kenyan who would check the administration of the day on so many issues. But with his exit, you have Mr. Rigiji, who seems to be doing a very good job. And in my view, when he comes up with misinformation and disinformation, like he did yesterday, and I'd like to advise him to read Proverbs 18:12. Because it captures exactly what he said yesterday. Then it gives the administration the responsibility to come up and correct facts. And I've been saying these times above number from Mount Kilimanjaro. This time I want to go to Mount Kenya and say, if we do not fight misinformation and disinformation, then misinformation and disinformation is going to compromise next year's elections, and we may end up electing leaders not on material facts, but because of emotion.
What misinformation was delivered yesterday?
Like, for instance, he spoke, I'll pick one. He spoke about the ownership of Nairobi Hospital. And without going into the details, Nairobi Hospital is owned by members. It's not possible for one individual to own that kind of facility. But you see, for people who do not know the articles of association or the memorandum of association of the Kenya Hospital Association, in fact, they'll believe that the Nairobi Hospital has been taken over by an individual.
What did Rigathi Gachagua say?
He spoke about ownership and interest.
No, what did he say that would now make you want to counter that Nairobi Hospital is not owned by an individual? What did he say?
No, that it's been taken over by President Ruto. Yeah, and it's owned by members. And every member has got one right. I mean, if say you are 1,000 members, one vote. So it's not possible that one person can actually have a same majority of preferential shareholding. But we must give him still credit, because when he comes up with these statements, then it makes people to be on their toes.
All right. You look at even the Nairobi Hospital issue, and I remember the time when even doctors themselves were having an issue with them accusing President William Ruto of meddling with the day-to-day running of the institution. You know, President William Ruto is the patron of the hospital. But that notwithstanding, let's look at the fact under the bottom-up transformation agenda, as it were. And one would ask the question, where are we when it comes to the economy, pesa mfukoni? Where are we with the promise of universal healthcare? Where are we with the promise of education access to everybody, if you're looking at Ruto at 4?
See, Dennis, it is William Cullen Bryant who quipped that truth crushed to earth will always rise.
Yep.
And it is time enough that then we must see and witness truth rising from the earth to which it has been attemptedly crushed by Rigathi Gachagua. And that's why I'm speaking to facts, data, and reality.
Yes.
You see, the issues you've asked, for instance, to do with universal health coverage, to do with education, to do with infrastructure development, to do with the economy. All these issues are evidence-based. And they are not merely phantasmagorical that are escaping the reality of Rigathi Gachagua's witness. Look, let us go, for instance, to the issue of universal healthcare. Today, as we are seated here, well, even from the Ministry of Health, they have indicated that almost 31.8 million Kenyans, have registered under the new health scheme of the Social Health Authority. Second, 8.1 million Kenyans so far since its establishment have directly benefited from SHA. 8.1 million Kenyans.
Okay.
Now, when you think about women, children, the elderly, who are benefiting from this program and who today do not have to cough out money from their pockets, it speaks to the race that we have as a country towards comprehensive universal health coverage. Another thing is this. Having, for example, the CHPs, community health promoters, who are going around all the villages and hamlets equipped with gadgets, helping to check out and ensure that, for example, issues are determined or picked out early enough for attention, and those that require medical attention, they are guided on going to particular hospitals.
I'm going to stop you
Today,
there, Jarvis.
Yes.
Yesterday, the Ministry of Health had a symposium with the media.
Yes.
And the thing that you talk about is actually what they posed as a problem. Hang on. Dr. Mercy Mwangangi said very clearly that the problem that they are facing is what you use to show a progression. And they said that it is a problem that only 8.1 people or 8.1 million people are registered and paying against a backdrop of 31 million who have registered and are not paying. So they are bearing the responsibility for these others. And that is why they have the problem, why they are not able to pay facilities, why that you may go to hospital today and you will not pay for all of what you need because not enough people are paying. So what you're looking at as a progression by the Ministry of Health is being seen as a problem, not from my mouth, from the CEO of SHA.
I get your point. In fact,
it's not my point. It's what the ministry
I get your perspective.
It is not my, hold on.
Yes.
It's not my perspective. It is not my point. It is a fact that has come from the Ministry of Health saying that this is a pain point for them.
It is a systemic.
So what it does is that it puts a direct hurdle in the delivery of universal health care.
In fact, let me make it even more clearer. And I do not disagree with the position of the ministry and even Dr. Mwangangi. When you look at people that are in gainful employment, who contribute to this, that number is small.
It's 3 million.
Yes, compared to the universal, all of us Kenyans who are supposed to benefit from this system. And that is a challenge where we are agreeing, and that's what the ministry is positing, that this is a huge burden. It does not mean that regardless of this huge burden, it is not working. She didn't say it's not working. It is working. Now, let's face it. Even if you're to do global comparatives, you'd realize that, pick a country, for example, Nigeria, or pick a country even in Europe, you'd realize that it is not even 70% of the population that pays for the health system. And I'm talking about here functionality. Now, I have had critical engagements even with service providers. And for comparison purposes, let me give you, for example, the National Health Services Scheme in the United Kingdom. A good scheme. And the UK, they've got a social welfare, so it's a social welfare system. Do you know that in the United Kingdom, before you get to see a doctor, under their system, you could be queued for up to 3 months, 4 months, even 6 months before you get to see a doctor. Here in Kenya, you go to see a doctor today, you examined, or even go for surgery, and everything is settled.
Those are on referral cases.
And that's what I'm telling you.
No.
No, let's face it, Oko.
No.
No, let me prosecute the point.
Jarvis, you need to be clear that these queues that you're talking about in the UK are on referral basis, and their ads is after you have gone and you've seen an initial doctor. But then if they keep you on the queue for 3, it is on a referral basis, not when you're going in for a headache and you need first aid. So there's a fundamental difference.
Correct. And then secondly, and also appreciate too that this is within the public health sector. You know, most of you people, for example, working in the private sector or media, celebrities like yourselves, and the upward of 300,000 shillings, and you are on a comprehensive health cover that's private.
Eric, would you like to confirm that?
And we don't know that this is a major relief to most Kenyans of poor earnings and even those who have got really basic money. That's just under health. Go to, for instance...
let's stay with health, if you'll allow me. Do you know the stipend that community health providers are given in Kenya?
In fact, Oko...
No, just answer. How much? How much?
I'm answering.
How much?
Let us start of all by appreciating the fact that...
Jarvis, I've asked a question.
Have they been there?
This is what we're
going... Is it a fact that they're there?
This is what we are going to do.
Okay.
Because you talked about facts and data.
Yes.
So I'm asking you for data. How much... are community health providers? I'm going somewhere with this, so what would help?
Okay, ask the comprehensive question.
The question is, how much are community health providers given?
In fact, even just the other day at State House, you've seen that even...
2,000, 10,000, 100,000, how much are they given?
Are they being paid?
How much are they given, Java?
No.
I'm asking. No.
We are starting from.
Okay, hold on. No, we are starting from a question that I'm asking. I'm asking for an answer. You said you have data and information. There is a way I'm going with this, so I'd like an answer.
Okay.
If you don't know, you can just say I don't know. Then I can say no, Javas. What we will do is we will have a conversation that makes sense. I'm asking a question to build it. If you don't know, you can say you don't know.
Under the government of President William Ruto, have CHPs been employed?
I'm asking the question.
How much are they paid?
No,
they're employed. Fine.
Have they been employed? Have they existed before? No. Is it something that we're appreciating and that actually they're helping where there is need?
You know, the thing about a conversation is that when you're building a foundation for a conversation and there are things that you've said, no, we won't do this. No.
We must have conversations from an impact analysis.
Why won't you answer the question that goes
from an impact analysis?
Okay, you know what? You don't know. Now let me tell you. They're given 3,500 shillings a month in a stipend, all right? Now, do you also know that when, for example, a community health provider goes into the community, right? Because that's where their primary connection is. That, let's say a woman is going to be delivered of her baby and a community health worker will go there. The real situations, because we've had barazas with them here, they tell us the 3,500 shillings that they're given, if he or she has to take someone to be delivered of her baby, do you know that everything else that they have to do will come from that stipend that they're given of 3,500 shillings? That she will go to a medical facility and she'll be told, umekuja na gloves na uyu. They've left somebody in the house as well. They take from that stipend to sort out those people. Do you know that this is the reality? And if that's the reality, can we now put it in an ecosystem where we're saying all of these things are working?
Oko, there have been some challenges in the past. As we're speaking right now, just the other day, the president launched the health emergency number, 922, and 24/7 ambulance facilities that's even coming in now to help in national emergency services.
Okay, we're going to take a break because you know what Jarvis is doing? We're playing a song.
No.
We're playing a song and you're dancing to the next song.
No, all these are improvements.
We're taking a break.
In the health sector.
And then we'll come back and we'll talk about this data and communication in this delivery versus the promises. Dance to the song that's playing. Let's continue this morning and looking at a year to the next general election in terms of, promises and delivery, what it looks like.
Yep. So I just want to bring in Dismas. When we talk about healthcare as we speak at the moment, so 31 million registered, 3 million who are in formal employment paying, 1 million informal jobs as well paying. We have a deficit of 28 million who are enjoying these services but are not paying. And that has been seen as a problem. But that notwithstanding, the users of SHA, and here I can tell you for a fact, not cabinet, not the president, they do not use SHA. They cannot tell you whether SHA is working or not. Enter Mwananchi. They are the ones who will give you the feedback in terms of whether it is working or not. And over time, they have been complaining. So when we say universal health coverage is a reality in the country, is a reality for who exactly?
Well, there have been many conversations. Not long ago, I heard President Ruto stating that SHA is working. And during the launch of the 922, the chairman of the Council of Governors said SHA is working. Now, in my view, when you're coming up with a major reform, like, for instance, in healthcare, probability of everything going smooth is 0%. There must be turbulence, there must be challenges. And in my view, what the authorities need to do is to actually listen to the people who say that SHA is not working and establish whether, in fact, that is the case, that SHA is not working. Because we are in a space where there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. There's a very high chance that SHA is working, and then there's a very high chance that there are challenges. So in my view, what the authorities must do is listen to the customer or the consumer feedback and establish whether, in fact, that is material. But even to make it a huge success, we need also to suggest very drastic proposals that are to make sure that a public sector or a public healthcare or public facilities work 100% as it's anticipated. Then if you are a state officer, maybe there should be a limitation that you don't use private healthcare facilities, so that the people you are talking about, the public servants of rank, actually are forced to use public facilities. I remember not a long time ago when Charity Ngilu was sick, and she was responsible for the Ministry of Health. When she got sick, she actually went to Kenyatta National Hospital. And she came out and said it's working. So in my view, for all these public sector goods, we need to ensure that the architects of those policies are the beneficiaries of their decision. That way, then they'll enjoy the benefits of their decisions and suffer the consequences if they're not working. But more important, we could even adopt some of the best practices. Like the challenge we have in Kenya, I understand, is primary healthcare. And you have Cuba, which is a huge success. Maybe there is a merit in borrowing a few things from Cuba to find out what works. Even when you're talking about affordable housing, the people look at it from different perspectives. But at the end of the day, one school says that affordable housing is about wealth and employment creation. There is that plumber, there is a carpenter on the Goretti Road who has had a big contract, to supply furniture to all these houses. Understand, if you look at the demand for cement, demand for steel, it's gone up. There are so many more units. And I don't know whether one can say that there were reports a few days ago that the cost of housing in Nairobi is coming down. So I don't know whether it's because of you get many more units from the affordable coming to the market. So there are many ways to look at it. And in my view, the biggest challenge with the administration has been the communication aspects. Telling people, like for instance, if you're talking about affordable housing, you cannot come up with a sufficient number of units for every Kenyan. There is even conversation that now you need to come up with affordable units that have got a provision for poultry farming. But you see, for a plumber or for an architect who's been sitting without work for donkey years, but now you've been given the opportunity to go and, if you're a painter, you're painting all those houses. At the end of the day, you're going to have income. You can also talk about MSME, where you have PS Susan Mangeni, who's creating opportunities for people who in the past had been excluded. So in my view, when you're looking at all these things, you cannot afford to look at them in isolation. It's part of a system. Of course, there must be challenges, there must be turbulence, and that is the reason why you have monitoring and evaluation. You can even talk about some of the successes. You can talk about, say, foreign policy, and I'm addicted to these international relations. A few days ago, we had an AMESEA conference in Nairobi, where you had and I'm Catholic, so you had 130 Catholic bishops coming to Nairobi to discuss issues, and they only came to Nairobi, or they only came to Kenya because of the stability. And I don't know whether you can actually understand the impact of having 130 bishops who are being hosted at Radix. If you're talking about our success of foreign policy, you can talk about that Kenya was invited to the White House, that Kenya addressed the G7. These are things which would ordinarily not come if you're having turbulence. And in my view, and looking at it from an helicopter view, we must accept that every single administration would be having challenges, and the the test of the matter is not whether or not they have challenges, is how they manage the turbulence.
You talk about stability in terms of people who are visiting Kenya, but where is the stability for Kenyans themselves? When the promise that was given to Kenyans is that disappearance will be a thing of the past, when extrajudicial killing will be a thing of the past, yet the government that promised not to do that is the very same government that is accused of killing its own people. So when you talk about stability, we'll talk about stability, visitors coming in protected and everything else. But what happens to Kenyan? Who pays taxes? Who maintains government? Who pays salaries? The government who maintains president and his cabinet. Are they stable in their very own country? Because that is where the crack of the matters is. We will talk about individuals who land in this country, JKIA welcomed in, passport stamped. The Kenyans who accessing that passport is a problem. Kenyans getting that ID is a problem. If their stability is not guaranteed, why the hell do we have any business talking about stability of visitors into a country where the people are not assured of that stability?
Well, Dennis, I'm not sure that your last premises are accurate, that getting an ID is a problem or getting a passport is a big challenge. But you've raised a very
I'm going to give
issue.
you an example. It took me close to 6 months for me to get my passport. It is a reality. I am a living experience. They're Kenyans within this government. It's this government. I'm going to tell you, it's a fact. I even have correspondence between me and government in me trying to get the ID. I can show you the receipts. We have Kenyans as well today who getting an ID is a problem. When you talk about stability, let's talk about stability as a wholesome subject where we'll talk about stability for individuals who are coming in, yes. But if there is no stability for Kenyans who are here, who are not assured of their security, of their healthcare, of their education, I reckon we have no business talking about stability of individuals who are visiting the country.
Dennis, what are the merits of stability? Because
you tell me.
Yeah, we need to examine the entire gamut of the metrics of stability. One, you left home and came here this morning. So did I. And I was not attacked on the road. I did not see barricades by civilians on the road, etc. I did not see marauding gangs on the road. There is calmness. When you can leave home and go to work. In other countries, even just leaving home to go anywhere, you can't because you're not even sure you'll come back alive. Second.
Are Kenyans sure?
Second.
Would Dr. Mutiso say
now, let's
she
face
came
it,
home and was sure to go back home?
We have got some challenges generally, but let's appreciate that the general state of calm, peace, security in the country is the envy of many in other places. That's why we've got patrol police officers, we've got traffic police officers, etc. All these people are there. They're helping to keep public order. It's a matter of fact. Now,
that's their job.
Pardon?
It's your job. Do you need to be applauded for doing that? It's what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. That's service delivered by the government. It is their job to do.
Yeah, so it's not something that you can promise and say.
No, it's not. Lots of chaos, promising disorder. And for example, just look at Gachagwa's statement yesterday. Let's face it, Oko. And I've never heard him even speak about a promise or anything that he can commit to do if at all he gets to be in power. Now, yesterday he said, for example, that issues of NADCO report, 10-point agenda, everything is flawed and this government has not achieved anything. Let's face it, comparatively, the Kanu regime, there are close to 10,000 extrajudicial killings and thousands of people in enforced disappearances. Look at the Kibaki regime, over 6,000. Look at the Jubilee regime, over 4,500. And it's been coming down. President William Ruto has said himself that unless somebody's death is on God's schedule, nobody's going to die. Second, as we are looking at things, we have now a reparations framework developed that's going to ensure it's dealing with issues of transitional justice. Thirdly, we have got the issue of compensation of victims of police riots and demonstrations. As we're speaking right now, over 900 persons have been compensated. Over 670 persons have been compensated. Over 800 million shillings has been disbursed already. That is a reality. As we're speaking, there is a bill now in Parliament being processed, the facilitation of assembly and demonstrations bill, to ensure that Article 37 of the Constitution on the freedom of assembly, right to protest, is now gets to be enabled under a legal framework.
Before,
This is the reality.
I have a question. It's a reality.
Then allow me to say
wait,
this.
Wait. It's a reality.
Yeah.
But the fundamental question is, why are these individuals being compensated?
It is because of the violations of their rights, which has been now established. It's by the state and police officers. And that has happened. The compensation goes way back. You see, what President William Ruto has admitted to is that there are these injustices. He is the head of state and government, and that the rights of these persons must be protected. That is constitutionalism and good governance, as a matter of fact. And no president has come close to this as President William Ruto. For example, in having a reparations framework, ensuring there's this compensation. Yesterday, you had even the court say that there has been the issues of torture, issues of consideration, and guided that 105 million shillings should be set aside by the compensation panel for purposes of those victims. And the president said all these issues must be dealt with and met. This is a fact that we're dealing with. Now, look at, for example, when Gachagua says that there's been no reforms in the coffee sector. Have there been reforms? Yes. Initially, for instance, per kilogram, somebody was earning between 20 to 70 shillings per kg. Today, it's moved up from 120 to 160. There's been the elimination of cartels. There's the direct system of payment. All these things are improvement. Today, the coffee sector alone has got employed people, directly and indirectly, close to 6.5 million. These are Kenyans, all the way Kirinyaga, Kiambu, etc., and parts of Rift Valley. They are benefiting from these reforms. Now, when Gachagua says that nothing has happened, I don't know what truth he's talking about. He's barring the truth. When 100,000 teachers, for example, are employed, beyond the fact that there is now an opportunity of employment for 100,000 graduates of education, we are seeing 100,000 people being lifted from poverty. We are seeing the teacher-student ratio improved from one teacher to 45 pupils, today to one teacher to 29, and we are moving forward.
Yep.
That's a fact.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate what Javas is saying about extrajudicial killing that they may have happened during prior administrations. But we cannot use that one as an excuse to say that they're going to be happen during this administration. You know, I don't know if that is called false equivalence or it's a fallacy of generalization. There's a fallacy there. What Kenyans expect to do is that under this administration, if there's been extrajudicial killing, people have been abducted, there must be criminal and pecuniary responsibility. That the people who pulled the trigger must be held accountable.
The people who beat somebody to death in a cell.
Or if somebody gave instructions, then they must be held to accountable. For Mora, who lives and works in Mososho, she doesn't care what happened during that administrations. But if her daughter or her son goes missing, she wants somebody to face justice. And that is where you expect leadership. Now, when you're talking about compensation, well, people love money. But if somebody is dead, you can give her however much money you want to, but it's not going to save her anything, which is the reason why there must be that criminal and the pecuniary responsibility, that somebody must be held behind bars. And, we know human beings respond, the pain and pleasure principle. If you're a law enforcement officer, you know that if you're going to engage in killing and it's against the forces standing order, then you're going to face the law. That is what Kenyans need. But outside that, again, Dennis, it would be erroneous to use your premises. Every country in the world has got a law enforcement system. Every country in the world has got a prison system. The people commit crimes every day and they're held accountable. So the question is whether the law enforcement system works. And going to the successes, you can talk about FDI. You are talking about stability. I would give an example. The people who work at Radix Hotel, where this Messiah conference took place, they were happy with having these bishops coming to Kenya because you had many more suppliers, people sold their goods and services, and they're generally happy. When Kenya is positioned as an FDI destination, you have many people coming to invest here and you create employment and wealth. It's very easy to pick up a certain lens or a certain bias and say, nothing is working within a particular state. But I think we have got a responsibility to try to be objective and remove any biases that we may have. Because being very controversial is a very interesting position. But when you look at the facts and figures, they paint an entirely different picture. And in my view, that is where I wanted to say, The challenge with the President Ruto's administration is communication. That some of their signature events have not been well communicated, and most of the principal secretaries and even cabinet secretaries hardly talk about the successes of their departments or ministries. In fact, for me, and I stand corrected, apart from Musalia Mudavadi and Mbadi, I don't see other cabinet secretaries talking about the successes in their ministries. And apart from Susan Mangeni, I don't see other principal secretaries talking about their state departments. They are operating on nil by mouth. And if you don't do that, it's like you're winking at a girl in the dark. So you know what you are doing, but the girl has no idea. So if they sort out the communication challenge, it will come out. But then it will only be a success if they've got trusted messengers. Yeah. In other words, they must come up with a very solid strategic narrative and deploy it. And finally, it's a reality about political science that voters hardly reward an administration for socioeconomic successes. You can hit all the high notes, but you are not going to be rewarded by another term. No, but voters tend to punish people who do not deliver, which is the reason why President Ruto's administration must recalibrate and re-strategize on their communication strategy for them to be a success.
You see, when you talk about FDI, while it's important, one thing that foreign direct investment will not do is invest in a country where security of its citizens is not guaranteed. Respect to human rights is not seen, where taxes are high for them to be able to set up business, where there is no clear taxation regime from one government to one government, from 1 year to another year within the same government. FDI would not respond where we do not have ease of doing business, where corruption is the order of the day. When we talk about stability, as I was talking, all these bases must be handled. You can't say that one area is doing better while you're leaving another area totally unattended to. We have to sit here and talk about, even when we talk about development, there is development of brick and mortar. There is development of humans as the propellers of this development we're talking about.
Can I ask a question?
No.
Yes.
Let me answer that one first. Javed, let me answer that first.
Okay.
And that is the reason why you need to have a national conversation which is immunized from politicians, political actors, and political interests. So that Mura, Alima, and Wanjiko, we sit down and agree that Kenya is at point A. How do we get to point B, irrespective on who is running Kenya? Now, we need to have that national conversation. But immediately, President Ruto says we're going to have a national conversation. And you know, Kenya, we are very strange. I remember at some stage, a telecom CEO said, Kenyans are very peculiar. We love attacking personalities instead of attacking ideas. In my view, the reason why we need a national conversation is we immunize the conversation from politicians' selfish interests masquerading as national and public interest, so that we agree where we're supposed to go.
And how do you do that if the people who are leading the conversation are exactly the political animals that you talk about?
I mean, the national conversation must be led by a head of state or head of government. But now you see Mr. Rigathi Gachagua, DCP, saying, wait a minute, this is not the right time for a national conversation. When is the right time for a national conversation? Because at any point in time, you're going to have a president. At any point in time, you're going to have an opposition. You know, I think the challenges we have and the perils we have in Kenya is this insatiable appetite for attacking personalities. Like, for instance, if the national conversation starts today, for people who take Mr. Rigathi Gachagua's word to the bank, and that is a fair portion of Kenya, they're not going to participate in this national conversation. Now, all the issues you raise here, how do you make Kenya competitive? For instance, there are people who have left Kenya because of the cost of energy. That I understand Zimbabwe and Egypt, it's much lower. The cost of energy is much lower in those two countries. So the question is, how do you reduce that cost of energy? We've got to understand a strange group of people called independent power producers who make the cost of energy very high. How do you reduce that? Number two, how do you ensure that the rule of law is highly regarded? You know, those are the building blocks for a national conversation.
This is the thing that people are saying, that you don't need to start being formulaic about it. How do you make sure that the rule of law exists? You follow the Constitution. It's very clear. And what the problem is that we want to add so many things to a very simple formula. The rule of law, where people sat down and there were people and experts who came about and everybody said, yes, let's go with this Constitution. But we kind of want to say, well, okay, the Constitution is there, but how about we add something to it? You don't. It's there, Javas.
The Constitution of Kenya 2010 binds everyone.
Exactly.
State officers.
You don't have to do anything different if you just follow the Constitution.
And who is not following the Constitution? Who is not following the Constitution? The president, for example, swore all the cabinet secretaries, they take an oath to protect and work and act directed by the Constitution. Everybody. And in fact, even if you are not a public officer, still you are bound by the Constitution.
Yep.
And that's why, in appreciation that even understanding and the interpretation of the Constitution must be in a manner that promotes good governance and facilitates the rule of law as provided for in Article 259. That's why I even cited a little earlier the issue of the compensation of victims, the issue of having a framework for reparations. Now, do you know that over the last 3 years, we've had a scale-up of even tourists in the country? Today we are hitting 3.5 million. Initially, it was actually 2 million or 1.8 million. Talk about investments. Yes, there are some companies that now have migrated due to other challenges. We have got others that are setting shop here. Just the other day, of course, we have seen that even Africa's billionaire, Aliko Dangote, is joining hands with other actors, taking lead in setting up an oil refinery in Lamu. Now, this is a huge investment coming to our shores. When I hear, for example, Rigathi Gachagua warning tourists, warning investors, is he a patriot? What kind of country, what kind of sentiment does he believe in? Look, let's face it. We need to have a politics driven by a competition of ideas, not rumors, not fear-mongering and sloganeering. I've not seen critical competition of ideas or proposal of ideas by people, for example, in the opposition. We need to have this festival of ideas going into the election.
Okay.
Not just mere criticism and having nothing to offer. Because if you were to ask him even after his speech, now what do you have to offer? If you have nothing to say, the only thing you can say is nothing. And I think that's where he's coming from.
Javas Bigango and Dismas Mokua, time doesn't allow us to do much further than that. Thank you both for joining us this morning.